Hello, A&P students. Yes, A&P students, that's all I said. And that is because your curriculum, your information that you're going to be talking about finally separates from the bio people. Get them people out of here, holding us back, all that good stuff. Hey, welcome. Hey, thanks for tuning us in. Thank you for pulling up the video and continuing our educational journey. Wow, what a day this has been. What a morning this has been. This is, as you can see down here, Saturday, August 29th. I don't know what it's been like where you are at, but if you'll think back to the 29th, and I say think back because this is chapter 5. This is probably, well, it's certainly October by now. Possibly. I have to double check the schedule, but maybe late September, early October, in there somewhere. And we have had storms and storms and storms and storms today. It's been quite a day. We got limbs down everywhere. I know the missus keeps coming in here and looking at me like, when are you going to be done so you can go out there and clean up all that stuff? So, but I'll get out there soon enough. But we've got branches down, limbs down. Part of our fence is I'm going to have to put it back together because a huge branch fell across it and separated the planks from the support beam. So I got a good big mess out there. But that's a whole different topic. We'll get to that in due time, and be nice if the dogs would go out there and fix that. But they're just laying around. They're laying around because they're completely handicapped right now. I've got this, or I should say I got this. My wife has this 90-pound lab, and if we were to take it to the pond or creek like we do, it just gets in there. She gets in there, Avery, and jumps around, splashes around, throws water everywhere, tries to catch little fish, tries to get things out of the water, and has a great time. She's a lab, or I should say part lab. And we know they're famous for getting in the water and having a good time. But let it rain? Oh, geez. She can't do nothing. She certainly won't go outside and do business when it's raining, and she won't even go outside if the grass is wet. No. You can't get paws wet on a 90-pound lab, even though if you take her to water, she's all about that. But let it rain, and she is completely handicapped, and we'll just hold it until I can't do it anymore. So that's been my day. Hopefully yours is going well, whatever day this is. And I know it's quite an odd intro, but connections is connections, and we're all people and got lives. So there's a little bit of my Saturday. So hey, welcome, Human Tissue, chapter 5. Okay, we're doing this over tissue, and again, as I mentioned, separation between us and the bio people. Get them out of here. And so let's get into this. Let me get me now. Oh, I should say that this chapter we're going to break it into three videos. So it'll be a true series, chapter 5 series. One, just to make sure they're not too long at any given time, and that way you can kind of separate them, because we do have 3 class periods designated to chapter 5. So you can break them up a little bit, watch them a little bit, and that way we can talk about them inside of each other as the days go by. So this first one, the first half will be really background information, and in the first part of the types of cells, types of tissue, I should say the types of cells that make up tissue. And the second video has the second half of that. Along with, let's see, I think it's, connective tissue. Yeah, connective tissue. And in the third one, we'll have the blood, and it will have the muscle, and, then at the end, tissue growth and repair. So that's the 3 videos. So you enjoy them. They're going to be a good time. We'll try to make them as interesting as we can in our own special little way. So also, and this also, chapter 5 really kind of begins the true idea of A&P material. Chapters 1, chapters 2, chapters 3, chapters 4, those are important, but those are general biological explanations that you need to have so you understand how everything's working and things that we talk about. But this one, it kind of begins that true A&P feel, that true A&P look. So with that, let's get it started. Here we go. All right, let me get me a little ink tray here. We're going to go with red just simply because that's a cool teacher color, and you can't go wrong with that. So what's on your screen here is a bunch of background information that will kind of guide us through the rest of the way. But here's kind of our topics. The 3 videos will cover these 6 topics. They're obviously not all in this. And so video 1 is in here. This would be 1. And then this is 2. And then 3. Something like that right there. That's not perfectly described, but you'll kind of get the idea of how this will work. So with that, hey, let's get it going. Let's get started. Hopefully we can keep it in that 45-minute range, but no promises. None. All right. Now, one thing you want to remember is that organs, and that's essentially what we're going to be talking about, the tissues of organs. Organs are made of tissue, and then tissues are made of cells. So if you think about an organ, it's layers and layers and layers of tissue, which are made of cells, and in some cases it might be layers, others they might be single rows, but you'll see all that in due time. Now when we're talking about, I'm going to be up here now, when we're talking about organs, the formal definition, we're talking about structures that have these clearly marked boundaries. Okay, so like we're talking a kidney. Okay, if we are opening up some organism, we can clearly identify the kidney. There's no gray area, no pun intended. There are no confusion about that. That's the kidney. That's the heart. That's the stomach. That's the skin. Yeah, skin. That's an organ. Yeah. And so on and so on and so on. So truly, clearly marked situations. Now, histology. Okay, that's anytime you see that ology back there, the study of tissue and how they arrange into organs. So some people just completely study this. This is their field. This is their idea. But how these tissues interact to form the organs. Some other basic information. I know this is kind of long, but we will try to keep it as understandable as possible. Now, when you think about tissue, okay, it typically has 3 layers, and you'll see these same 3 prefixes in a lot of things. And of course, derm, we're talking tissue here. That's suffix back there. And then we've got our 3 prefixes, ecto, endo, and meso. And if you've taken enough biology, that you know that we're talking about outside, inside, and middle. So M's easy, M for middle, M for mesoderm, endo, indoors. That's an easy way to remember that. And then of course that leaves ecto as outer or outdoors or outside. So those are the 3 prefix, 3 or the suffixes that they're attached to, and a little bit about each one of them. Okay, an ectoderm layer kind of gives rise to the epidermis, and that's the top layer of your skin, and of course the nervous system, and we're familiar with that, nervous system. That system you will study heavily in A&P 2, the whole neurons, brain, spine, spinal cord, all that kind of good stuff. The endoderm. Okay, it gives rise to mucous membranes, and of course that's membranes that have glands that secrete that mucus that line the digestive tract and the respiratory tracts. Those two systems or tracts rely heavily on mucus. Prevention is a lot of it. It keeps dust and bacteria, kind of traps it, holds it in place, or it's also, if it's mucus and it can be expelled, then it allows to get rid of that stuff. But it kind of bogs them down and allows things to come along and clean them up as we can. Mesoderm typically gives rise to muscle, bone, and blood, that kind of stuff. And so those are some general terms, and then some ideas of what their functions are and what they do. Okay, our last little bit of background information, we're going to be dealing with this section right here. When you look at slides, would be one avenue, but you could also just look at whole entities of these different the different body parts. Excuse me. You can look at the whole thing, and whether it's a bone, as you can see in the picture there, or just some other part. But there are various ways in which they're presented to you to look at. And a lot of it is based on what they are and what you want to see. So, for example, you could have a longitudinal section. In other words, it's been cut in a way to study it in a particular way. And of course, longitudinal means it's cut down the length, okay, almost like a frontal plane, as we talked about in earlier chapters. And then you got your cross-sectional or transverse, as you can see here, transverse across here, so like you're looking down into it. So that way, even though it's a bone, you can see how you can study them in various ways. The longitudinal, you can study all the components, and then the cross-section, the transverse, you can study what it looks like inside. And you got your oblique, it's kind of a cross, as it says here, between longitudinal and cross-section. Now, other two ways that you can see this, and if you've had microbiology or maybe studied it in high school a little bit, this word smear, it's simply a way of wiping something on a particular medium in order to study it. The medium could be a petri dish, the medium could be a slide, but a smear is just simply taking some instrument, whether it's a Q-tip, whether it's just a prong of some sort, and just kind of smearing it across so that it can then be studied. Now, a spread would be simply taking a portion of it and just laying it out, just like you would spread out the comforter or a sheet or whatever, or a spread as far as food, placing it all out to be consumed. And lay out on the slide, lay out on the table so it can be studied. So those are some ways in which the specimen or the object could be presented to you as a way of studying. Hey, sorry about the dramatic pause there. Just got me a little drink of water to keep the process going. So that is the first set of information. What we're going to look at now is the various types of cells that our body has that it uses to make the tissue. So let me close the ink tray here, and let me slide this here. And you know what? We can make this a little bit bigger. You know what? Maybe we can't. Let me see if I can move this over somewhat. I'm gonna move this with it so you can see the name. And then you can move all this over. Yeah, that is the end of it right there. Can I move this, I wonder? Nope. Alright. So it'll just have to, maybe I can go up. Yeah, I can go up. No, but not enough. So you just have to live with that being over your bullet point there. But you can see the information. All right, when we're thinking, our first category for these cells is epithelial tissue. Epithelial tissue is, as mentioned, that's what the skin's made out of. But what we've got going on here is different types of cells allowing or forming the different types of tissues. And there's a big old long list. Let me get my pen up here of things to think about. But when we think of epithelial tissues, we're talking about cells that are connected, cells that are close together, almost like a flat plane, so you could refer to it as a sheet, as it does there in that first bullet point, but just a layer. Okay, so if you think about tissues, you can think about sheets on a bed, not the fitted ones with the elastic on the corner. That's too hard, and certainly to fold them is impossible. But we're talking about the top sheet. You can just lay it flat, and then think about taking another sheet and laying it on that, another sheet laying it on that, another sheet laying it on that, and you keep piling them up until you get enough layers, and it would form the organ. Okay, and these layers, they can either have one cell, or it can have two cells. Lots of flexibility there, and we're going to show pictures of all this. So I know you're writing down. You probably have paused this so you can write all this down, and that's great. Thank you for doing that. But we will show pictures as well, and they're over there to the left. They're over here. I mean, to the left, to the right. They're over there somewhere, and we will get to them. Now, these epithelial tissues are everywhere. I mean, they're going to cover the body, as in the skin. They're going to line the cavities, both the outside and sometimes the inside. And you can see here, most of the glands are made up of epithelial tissue. And of course, typically, the epithelial tissue will lie on a layer of connective tissue, and of course, then it's got to rely on that blood getting up there, and the blood nourishes it and allows for waste removal, brings oxygen, all that great stuff. Epithelial tissue, that top layer, as we know, it doesn't have blood vessels in it. You got to get down into the lower levels to get that, which is why a very soft, shallow paper cut doesn't create any blood loss, but you get your little knife wound, get your little something a lot deeper, and you can get that blood flowing, which then you got to deal with it. But most of you are going to become nurses, so that won't be a big issue. So that's some kind of background information for epithelial tissue. I know it's long, boring. I get all that. But hey, we got to know it. We got to see it. We got to write it. We got to feel it. We got to have it. So that's the idea now. So we've talked about the epithelial tissue. We've talked about the connective tissue as far as the attachment and being connected to the epithelial tissue. But we'll get to connective tissue. That's part of video 2 that you will watch either possibly right after this, or you'll wait until it's time to, or it fits into your schedule. So you'll have complete options on that. But the basement membrane, that's the one we're going to think about right now. That's a layer that is in between the epithelia and connective tissue. So if we were to draw kind of a little metaphorical picture, and let's pick some different colors. We'll pick green because we love the Hulk skin layers, green. So epithelial tissue. So say we drew that layer, and now we'll pick a different color. Let's go with blue for the basement membrane. That's right underneath it. And then let's pick the gold here because it's right up here. And that would be the connective tissue. So it's kind of layered like that. Of course, obviously they're a lot closer than that. Microscopic, connected, all that good stuff. but that's kind of the way it looks at, or is layered. Now, if we think about what a membrane is, basement membrane is made out of, collagen for the most part. So very elastic, okay, very durable, good strong materials, and you can see the rest of that. But that's the understanding it's made of collagen. That is the highlight of that list. Okay, and so it does have a function, as I mentioned. It's meant to anchor the two tissues together. And our last thing in this part, if we take this, I'm going to draw a little section of the epithelial tissue. And of course, this is the basement tissue in here, basement tissue, little b, basement tissue, basement membrane, I meant to say. So the epithelial tissue has two surfaces, obviously one that touches the membrane, one that doesn't touch the membrane. And one of them is called the basal surface. And you can see that faces the basal membrane. So that's going to be, so let me write the word basal out here. Oh, that's not a great A or S right there, but basal. If it faces the basal membrane, then it obviously has to be this side right here. And if we think, we'll come over here and write apical. Apical, that's got to be, it faces away, so that's got to be this top part. That's the apical right there. All right, so that, again, background information, getting your mind wrapped around how this stuff is structured. And now, let's talk about the different types. So let me close my ink tray here. And we're sliding over here, and you can see I got to go down here a little bit, or up here a little ways. You slide this over. So we've got to do, we'll do this part. Get my ink tray up here. We'll do this part, and then we'll talk about this, and then we'll talk about this, and then we'll slide it over so we can talk about the different types. And this particular video covers these top three here, and then the bottom three will lead off the next video. So you can see we've got this section to talk about, and then each of these three through these pictures and descriptions, and then we're done for this particular video. So, but again, shooting for that 45. We'll see how I do. Alright, so let me close this out, see if we can't get a little bit up, and I'm not going to get all that one down there, so we'll have to move it up a little bit more. Alright, now, when it comes to the cells, they can be arranged in a couple of different ways. There's a couple of different types and a couple of different ways that they're arranged. We're going to talk about the arrangement first, and then we'll get into the shapes after that. All right, arrangement. These two, I don't need my pen, are the two main types, simple and stratified. And then this third one is kind of like a combination. And it looks pretty interesting in a microscope slide, but you've kind of got a combination of the two. This looks like it would be layers. Well, let me back, I'm getting ahead of myself. So if it's a simple cell structure, it means it's got just a single row of cells. They're all nice and neat, nice in rows, or nicely into one row, just a single set, just all right in a row. If they're stratified, as in here, Now they are on top of each other or they're layered. Okay, so this would be like row 1, this would be row 2, row 3, row 4, and you see this is kind of rolling over into a dome type shape. That's why you get that distant look there. So stratified would be multiple rows of cells, and simple is just one row. And then the stratified, it's easy for me to say, is kind of a combination of those two. It looks like there may be layers, but in reality you can see that it's just one cell. It's all that's in this column, and this one's in this column, and this one is kind of in its own column. Kind of in its own column. And pseudo-stratified meaning somewhat or fake layers, not really layers at all. They're not on top of each other. They're just kind of squeezed in there, wedged in there. So that's the three types. So, for example, squamous, which we haven't talked about yet, it could be a simple squamous cell layer. It can be a stratified squamous cell layer. It can be a simple cuboidal cell layer. It can be a stratified cuboidal cell layer. And the same with columnar. It can be a simple columnar. It can be a stratified columnar. Okay. And of course, what we're going to see here is just kind of explanation of the types and what they are. But it's pretty straightforward because they're just basically, the names are simply descriptions of their overall general shape. For example, a cuboidal has that geometric cube look to it. A columnar has that geometric, column or upright, tall box kind of thing. And then you got your squamous, which are just very thin cells. Almost look like a frying an egg kind of a thing with that nucleus in there, but very flat. And whereas cuboidal is almost two-dimensional only, but there is obviously some three-dimension there. But the cuboidal, the columnar, definitely a three-dimensional look, definitely geometric in shape. And of course, the pseudo-stratified, they can all fit that to where they'd be kind of wedged in between there. Some of these, if you are a simple, then every cell is going to touch the basement membrane. If you're stratified, the bottom layer will, but the rest of those will not touch the basement membrane, only be connected through their connection with the first layer. All right, so let's now scroll over here. I shouldn't scroll. Let me move over here, and let's talk about some types. Okay, so our first one we're going to talk about, and this is like an actual microscopic version, and this is like a computerized cartoon type picture of what we're going on. And you can see we're in the digestive system. This is obviously the stomach, and coming off that, heading into the intestines. Okay, and this little section here is what we're looking at, and you can see we just got one row. Okay, one row. Thin cells. Oh, I don't have my ink tray up. Okay, so thin cells, that tells you squamous. So we've got one row, so we've got a simple squamous cell layer going here. Now, some benefits of that, and again, we are going to be right here. Now, because, or it being squamous, the reason why that, or where that's helpful, is the fact because it is thin, because it doesn't have much height to it, things can get across its membrane and through the cell fairly quickly. So that's going to help with diffusion and moving materials in and out of that particular cell, getting materials to where it needs to go, because it is very thin cell. Okay, these particular ones secrete serous fluids, and you can find these in the alveoli, endothelium, serosa, things like that. Those are all mucus. A couple of those are mucus based. And this cartoon drawing, again, the same thing. Simple, thin cells, simple squamous cells. All right, close my ink tray. Move this up. Okay, let's see. We've got this one. This is cuboidal, and you can see that right there. And then we've got this one. This is the pseudo. And then we've got... No, I'm sorry. This isn't pseudo. This is the pseudo, because you've got the small ones, the big ones. These would be columnar. And then I think that's it. Yep. So not much. We're fast on our way to being done. So this second group, we had squamous. Wait, did I skip? Yeah, I skipped the cuboidal. I didn't talk about it. Excuse me there. All right, cuboidal. Okay, little round, not little round, little cubes. Okay, cube. And you can see that kind of square shape. Let me get a pen here. You can see that kind of square shaped, much like a plant cell, but these are not plant cells. Just the shape itself is cuboidal or geometrically square. But of course, it's got the not just the length and the width, length and the width. It's got that height or that depth, just like a dice. Okay, it can be shaped pretty similar to a dice. And single layer, again, simple. Okay, absorbing, secreting, as you can see, mucus production, movement. And you can find these liver, thyroid, different thyroid glands, bronchioles, and kidney tubules is where you will find this type of stuff. But cuboidal, so I could try to draw this. I don't do real well at this, but then you draw that. You got that part coming off of there. And you got that. And you know what? That wasn't bad. That's not a straight up and down box, but it's a pretty good idea. But a cuboidal. Okay, closing my ink tray. Now you're gonna see. Get my pen here. Tall, narrow cells. So tall, big not red flag, but big flag, big clue. So if we're talking tall, narrow cells, we're talking columnar. Okay, just like columns or a post on a front porch or a banister holding something up. These tall, skyscraper comes to mind. Okay, very tall, long, columnar-based cells. And you can see GI tract, uterus, kidney, tubes, those kind of things. But again, more absorption, secretion, with typical cell stuff. Okay, it can have, as you see, these microvilli on the end. And of course, microvilli are great. Anytime you see absorption, you're going to see that stuff. It just creates a lot of surface area. If this area was just a flat line and tried to absorb, it would do a decent job. But when I get these microvilli, now I create all kinds of surface area improvements. So I've got all this surface area. It almost triples or quadruples, triples the amount of surface area because it's got that lining. And you'll see that concept also in the brain when you get there, and ANP2, and the digestive system, those intestines will have them as well. So you'll see that kind of stuff, but just increasing surface area. All right, I think this is our last section. Yeah, it is. Pseudo-stratified. And when you think pseudo-stratified, let me get an ink here. If I were just to look at this section right here, and we'll talk about this. Anybody know what this is? Yeah, that's some fat tissue right there. That's some adipose. That's some fat tissue right there. But pseudo is the idea of, I've got one here, and it's there, and it's there. Okay, but not straight up and down, straight clear-cut rows and things like that. So pseudo-stratified, it appears to be in layers, but it is not. It is still simple, considered simple. Just columnar and squamous cells, perhaps, kind of intertwined, and in that manner. But you can see again, secrete. Okay, now we're talking respiratory tract, and again, you've got your microbiota here for absorption and increases that surface area. Okay, so that's the idea of those types: squamous, cuboidal, columnar, pseudostratified, and you've got the simple, you've got the stratified, how it may be, depending on if it's just one row or it's multiple rows of that particular type of cell. Well, that brings us to the end of video 1. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Hopefully you kind of get the foundation for tissue histology, human tissue, chapter 5, again, part 1. So with that, say goodbye. Thank you for making the connection here, for bringing us together one more time. And again, enjoy the rest of your day. I hope everything is going well for you. You're safe, sound. All your family are safe and sound. And that you are enjoying whatever day this is. Hopefully you are enjoying it. And with that, we will say goodbye.